Blog Talk Radio.
Hello out there in Radio Land. Welcome to Open Money on Blog Talk Radio. I'm Ernie Jacob, and I'm in the Comox Valley, as is Michael Linton, just around the corner in the valley. Morning, Michael.
Good morning, Ernie.
So you're not doing so good today, is that right? You're feeling bummed out.
It's Monday.
Oh,
I mean,
right.
You know, and it's another week in the planet Earth going sideways and upside down and inside out. I am
right. Well, and in fact, that's what we're going to talk about today is urgencies. We talked about, in the last show, we talked about monetizing ourselves and communities in Facebook and Google and MySpace, and how how people can use community currencies, open money systems, let systems, mutual credit systems within those networks and communities. Today we're going to talk about our communities on the ground, in our lives, day to day, and what's going on out there that really needs money.
Yeah, I think it's where the rubber meets the road. It's all very well to talk about these things as abstractions and theories and what's going to become so exciting on the internet anytime now. But the problems are around us by the day. People on the streets, hunger in the community, children without adequate support and clothing, and we're a desperate society. We're the richest society in the history of the planet Earth. We are one of the richest countries, one of the richest provinces here on the west coast of Canada. And yet we have homelessness, and we have poverty, and we have stagnation in the economy, and we have the greediness of real estate development as perceived as the greatest good of all mankind. It's a desperate situation. Food security, peak oil. These are issues that are looming increasingly in our immediate windshield. What's coming next week?
Well, yeah. I mean, are you going to have a job next week, and will you still have a home?
Yes. How many paychecks are you from being another one of the statistics? And what are we going to do about this? Well, clearly from our perspective, it's mobilize rather than demobilize, rather than disable. It's enable, make possible. It's get some local money moving so that people's innate skills and resources, and functionally their time, that they can be useful. Don't just sit around in despair. Become part of a network of contributive effort, the give and take of a living community, so that we can begin to address the serious questions that are facing us right now. And probably the simplest way to do that is to take a specific, outstanding current issue, like homelessness, like the lack of affordable housing in a community, and use a community currency application to show a productive, effective process that cannot be done otherwise. This is quite simply what community currencies will do for the homeless when people pick it up. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about a community way for capital fundraising for social housing. Okay.
Great idea. There's a piece of land just across from the house I'm in, the rental house I'm in, which we almost lost 3 years ago, and we could have been out on the street. But anyway, there's this piece of land just across the park from here that used to be a junior high school, and it's sitting vacant, and they're planning to put a cop shop in there, and it's like a block away from downtown. I mean, how stupid is that?
Yeah, well, it's the usual business of cheap options for the taxpayer, the municipality, here's a trade-off. We don't have to do this, we don't have to do that, and we can use this way, that way. It's the concept of land as valued at what the market would bear for it, which is inevitable. That's what the monopoly game is all about. That's what the real estate market is all about, is get your piece and then accrue on the fact that real estate rises, or has done generally, because we're all fighting.
Rather than the best possible use of that land, because the best possible use of that land is to build a multi-storied mixed housing and work and business community, a block from downtown.
All sorts of things can be identified as the best possible use of, or a higher possible use of the land than what it is generally used for, which is financial gain. That's all that. When most city councils, municipal councils, are asked to appraise whether a proposed use of a land parcel is appropriate, their definition of the highest and best use of the land is that which makes its owner the most money. It's a pretty pitiful approach.
And in this case,
unfortunately,
the owner is the city.
And the city will not likely part with this unless there is strong evidence that the community is in high support of the financial costs of addressing homelessness. There's no quicker way for a council to lose its vote and end up out of office than for them to be seen to be squandering taxpayers' money. And the homelessness issue would be a classic for that. So governments are holding back. They're saying, paying lip service to all sorts of things and doing nothing. Now,
well, homelessness is the rough edge. There is affordable housing. I mean, there are a lot of people who, the working poor, people who are making $10 an hour, can't afford decent housing. Can't afford housing at all. So they're couch surfing. They're going back home. They're sleeping in cars, whatever. That's affordable. That's an affordable housing issue.
Yes, and indeed, all housing issues basically come down to how much can you pay to be where you are, and that usually comes down to what were the costs of building or acquiring this housing, this shelter. And that comes down to the basic land costs, which are pushed by a housing market, which says compete or die. So even the people who are in jeopardy, particularly the people who are in jeopardy, have a higher competitive agenda. They have to compete even more stiffly than the people who are filthy, stinking rich and loaded. They just sit on their assets and watch them grow. But the people in the edge of the housing market are faced with the same challenges and considerably less resources. How are we to cut into that process? Because let's face it, you can do all sorts of political things and things with community enthusiasm, but until you've got the figures the right way up, it's always going to be a struggle to keep people's willingness to support something which may be costing money. People are very nervous.
Let's talk about getting the figures right.
Which means, how do you raise, say, $500,000 in a community as some form of public subscription that gives you a secure funding base to begin the acquisition and development of properties on behalf of a community land trust, a community housing network, an affordable housing initiative, whatever? How do you raise $500,000 in a small community for good vibes, good things, something like housing?
Okay, so how many businesses are there? What's the number of businesses that will?
Well, let's take the population base, because that's the beginning. That's where you start. Say to yourself, we've got a population base around here of about 70,000 people.
Let's make it 100,000.
Okay, let's take a place that calls itself 100,000. The figures are sort of easier in some ways.
Yeah.
Now, the initial target of a community way project is based upon the number of employees in a business that's a contributing, participating and ultimately beneficiary member. This is not about costing businesses, it's about benefiting business. So taking a look at the number of employees a business has, if it's got 5 employees, then possibly something in the region of $5,000 is a donation scale. Community dollars. 5,000 community dollars, 1,000 per employee in the business. That's the starting lineup. So if you're looking at raising $500,000, you're looking at what? 500 employees. $1,000 per employee, 500 employees. Now, how many businesses does it take in a broad mix of, say, retail, services, restaurant, maintenance, repair, health services, entertainment, arts, crafts?
Let's say 100. Let's say 100 businesses at an average of 5 per business, because that's a nice number.
Yeah, because you might pick up one business with 30 or 40 people, and you might pick up 20 businesses with 1 or 2 people. But 5's a nice-ish number. So if you could get 100 businesses in your community, that's about 500 employees represented there. Now, we're talking about a community base of 100,000 people. Now, in 100,000 people, you've got to say that, let's say, half of them, 50,000, for instance, are active in the workforce. They're employed, partially or totally or whatever, but about half the people in the region. So not the elderly, not the children, not the disabled, etc. But just about everybody else can be considered part of the workforce. And we're talking about, say, 50,000 workforce and 100,000 people. And we're looking to find 500 of that employee base to be the representative core element of a community way startup to support raising $500,000 cash. Not initially it's community money, but it's converted into cash and produces a cash fund of $500,000 from, well, what is it? That's 1% of the employee base that we're talking about. So 1% of the employee base of our community of 100,000 people is sufficient with a single community way initiative to create some funding in the region of $500,000.
And really, all that's happening here, businesses are donating community way dollars, and what happens is a business starts with an account in the community way system. Their account starts at 0. When the business donates, say, 10,000 community way dollars to the affordable housing project, that business goes negative 10,000. The affordable housing project goes positive 10,000. No cash money, no Canadian dollars have changed hands. Just 2 accounts. One goes down, the other goes up.
Very straightforward, very simple. It's a bit like loading bow and arrow. You know, the first activities in a community way system are preparation.
Priming the pump.
Yeah, priming the pump, setting the situation up. But there's no transfer at that point of substantial wealth, of energy or cost in any form at all. That happens later when the working time of the business that was a donor, be it a retailer or a restaurant, that some of their service to their customers is in a way delegated to the housing project. Because it's
so
sort of like
let's take a business such as Safeway or Thrifty's, a food store that has enough. Well, let's say they donated Thrifty's donated 10,000 community way dollars to the affordable housing project. So they're sitting with an account at negative 10,000. The affordable housing project moves the money.
Yeah, I'd actually say Safeway, as an aside in here, just to get this clear, there isn't a Safeway project on the planet that has 10 employees. I'd say Safeway is
right. Okay.
Right. Much bigger than that. But perhaps, of course, Safeway has 50 employees and it's donated 10,000 to the housing, 10,000 to the youth project, 10,000 to the food security development. You know, you could have gone a little bit ways. But Safeway's bigger than 10K. Let's be clear about that.
Yes. Okay.
But
in any case, so Safeway has sitting there with a negative account of 50,000 or 100,000 Community Way dollars, and people start coming in the door with Community Way dollars. Essentially, and the Safeway sets the rate at which they take those, they redeem those, they accept those.
And in the first level, they should be considering these like a powerful discount coupon. That's the simplest way for them to look at it is when people come in with Community Way dollars, we give them a deal. But we do it at, say, 10, 15, 20% of the price. Actually, 15, 20 would be the sort of level for a supermarket. Now, they can look at it as we're getting customers, and we've issued a loyalty coupon and look at the power that it has to bring them in. They can look at it as the loyalty coupon we issued was a charitable fundraiser and look at the good vibes we're creating. They can look at it as it's not just a loyalty coupon, it's actually the money that they're bringing in, the Community Way dollars, something that our staff employees in business can spend for product, for time, staff bonuses, and then they can spend it in other businesses in the community. So every which way you look at it, the business is benefiting. Even if they only try it out for a while and then stop, they've suffered nothing. And what has happened is that hard cash has been put into a project the community needs.
Right. I mean, that's
now, all this is on the web.
Fail-safe position for businesses. And that is that they can bring their, by earning the Community Way dollars, they can bring their account back up to zero and say, okay, we've honored our obligation. It was a really good experiment. It didn't work out that well for us. Or that's the fail-safe position.
Well, they won't be able to say it didn't work out well for them because that was their contract, was to do that and provide it and see what happened, and they might say that was enough for them. But if they say it didn't work out well for them, they're bloody idiots. They haven't noticed even that at that level it's been a satisfactory contract.
Right.
And
by the way, you were going to you were going to point to a website, and is it
I was going to say
Community Way website?
We're talking a bit too much about the description of this when, frankly, you can get it all on openmoney.org/CW. And in fact, if you Google Community Way, you'll probably find a lot of references to this idea. And it is widely accessible on the Let's.net site. So we don't have to detail how it works. Anybody who's interested has all the resources at their fingertips. What we need to be talking about are the practical details of how you persuade people to take this on. Who do you go to? How do you talk them into this process? What's the deal for instance, a housing project? Or anything that needs $500,000 quick. What do you say to them?
Well, I mean, for the project, it's easy enough. Do you want some money?
Yeah, that's an easy take on it. That's their pitch, is this is their benefit. But what's their cost? What does the organization have to do? And I'm talking here about, say, a senior services, home care network.
Like any organizations, they're going to have to make good use of that money.
Well, yeah, that's one. It's got to be something they want and are willing to use. But at this level of cold start, that is, there is no community currency in your community. There is no history of it. There is no strong understanding of it. When the community organization, in whatever field it is, says this looks like a good idea, they've got to be saying, first of all, and we know what businesses we can talk to. Because frankly, the initial kicker is Who wants to do this? Who will support it? What businesses are aligned with the elders or with home care in the community or whatever the project is? Who can be brought in board?
Okay, well,
Because
I mean,
that's really the first job.
Right. Any established organization has a network of supporters, some of whom are businesses, some of whom are working stiff professionals, you know, but they have business connections, and if a good part of their funding comes from the community, they know who their support is, so they can go to those people and say, okay, you've given us, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 over the years, and we're very appreciative. Here's how you can help us more and attract business.
So we should be talking to the board of the project, the homelessness or the housing support, the affordable housing, the Let's Buy the Lot Society, right? And it could be environmental protection, or it could be a hospital extension, or it could be
Women's Center, Transition Society, school. I mean, there's millions of organizations out there that need money to do what they're doing, what they're trying to do.
And you see, if you take a look at the long-term level of what you might realize, this community of 100,000 people, half of them roughly in the working population, suppose one managed in due course to float some sort of a charitable energy in the community equivalent to all of these people being part of it at some level. Imagine that. I know it's going to happen. You don't, the general reader, listener. But Ernie and I know this is the way it's going to go. And probably we'll get something like $1,000 per employee into the charity circuit this way.
For most businesses in the community.
Yeah. Well, that's an awful lot of money. That's $500 million in a community of this general scale. That's the elementary level of unresolved energy, if you like, of potential economic benefit that the community can pick up into social and real capital. But
and also this is money that stays around. I mean, 500 million Canadian dollars doesn't last very long. I mean, it's in and out like a flash.
In so many ways, yes. But we're talking here not even just about the amount of community currency that's available and generated, but we're talking about the initial reserve capacity of creating a community way model. May rise to something in the region of $500 million in a community of 100,000 people. And now that $500 million, how much of that is to be applied to housing issues, how much to farming issues, how much to education, how much to transportation enhancement, how much to arts and crafts, how much to whatever, whichever. Well, obviously it's a lot of money, a lot of range. So we don't have to be penny pinching about, oh my God, we want to raise money for the homeless or the affordable housing. Can we raise 10,000? That's nonsense. We can raise $500,000. We can raise $1 million through these processes. Just need the connection between the beneficiary organization, the task, the major purpose, and a small collection of supportive business participants. That's all we need. You just get the businesses together, get them signed on to this, and then you're starting to, first of all, generate the donations and the asset for the nonprofit, the asset in community currency, and then the conversion has to take place.
We ought to point
out that this is a self-financing
program too. I mean, right off the bat, people I think immediately think, okay, well, where's the pitch for the money to start the organization, to get a board together and committees so it's not a matter of going to the government or going to a foundation for.
No, it's real grassroots. It's right there, right then. It's not about you need a pile of money up front. You need a clear understanding of what the direct costs of the initiative are. I mean, somebody is going to have to spend some time on the ground organizing, pitching it to the local businesses, clarifying it, integrating the accounting. There is the processing of the transactions, which is not significant as a cost. If you do it some ways, and can be quite significant if you do it others. So
let's say the startup costs are somewhere in the $10,000 to $20,000 range, and since from start to cash flow can be a very short period, it would be 10 people in the community investing $1,000 each, backing a line of credit at the local credit union for $1,000, cash dollars, so you can get somebody organizing the program.
Yeah, if you've got the credentials of a local organization, you are the housing network, you are the hospital support thing, you're the school, parent teachers, whatever, I don't know. But if you've got the support of an organization, the credentials, that has a good introduction to the business community, then what you really need is one coordinator who is capable of implementing the introduction of those businesses and managing either the smart cards or the paper currency or the account clearing process, however it's to be done. It's not much cost at all. If you don't have to get into advertising and promotion, there's hardly any effort involved in getting it started.
Well, and in fact, the advertising and promotion can be paid for with community way dollars that are being donated by other businesses.
Well, indeed, you've got to recognize that in any fundraising activity there are costs: time, labor, printing, phones, space, whatever. And this is not different. What is perhaps different is that the costs are such a small proportion of the money that's raisable. In fact, we're very confident. And
the costs, if they're done as an investment, i.e., 10 people backing a line of credit for 10,000 Canadian dollars, can be paid back. They will get their money back.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that is the point. If you set up this as an application of community currencies, therefore the platform is basically free and it runs itself. But the organization that is de facto fundraiser on behalf of their own organization or others, could be a plural process, one group organizing fundraising for 20 or something, but whoever is doing it has to say, look, 10% of the community currency we raise goes into the operation of this project, goes into the continuing support of the staffing, the processing, whatever technology is necessary, whatever processes are needed. 10% of what we raise will be plenty to do that, and it'll set the pace of the package. Now, that 10% is certainly adequate to secure those people who take the risk of underwriting the first 10,000. They'll get the risk resolved quite quickly.
And any sweat equity that the organizers put in.
Well, basically, it is important that organizers are cheap paid. Those are the two apparently contradictory characteristics that we all face when we go out to try and do something good in the community.
Or to try something new. It's like any startup small business knows
everything is done on the edge.
Or they will pay themselves.
Yeah, people start out having to say, look, this is speculative. I'm not taking a $500,000 salary in the first year. They have to bite the bullet and tighten their belts and shoulder to the wheel, nose to the grindstone, whatever it is you got to do. So now when you bring that, actually, let's be more specific. If you go out to get a grant to do some sort of environmental cleanup or social planning or whatever, you will find that the grant agency wants you to pay your employees nothing or less. It's regarded as a good grant if the wage scales and salaries involved in the employee base are low. If you're asking for too much money to pay people, they think that you're profligate. You're not a good grant applicant. So what we do is we end up with poorly paid people who are doing it under the circumstances because they got to, either morally, and they can survive on the levels of salary being offered. Well, this is very poor policy in general terms. And in terms of a community way process, there's absolutely no need for it. An employee in the Community Way project can have a decent wage, provided they make it both dependent upon the success of the project and that they're willing to sort of become equity partners in the process rather than give me the money, I did my job, employees.
Well, and accept the Community Way money, the Community Way dollars, in payment for their services.
Yeah, that's now if you've got that partnership between the instigators, advocates, activists, the street workers who put this thing forward, the beneficiary organization that's going to make a large income, a new revenue source for their projects, and the businesses who are looking at seeing this as being a test of how community currencies will work in many aspects of the business, not just the corporate social responsibility and a little bit of charitable this, that, and the other. Significant as it is, that's not the real point. For the business, what they get out of it is, this is how community currencies work, and boy, I wish I'd seen it earlier. That's the plan. But
well, and not only that, they're going to see increased business.
Which
people
is
with Community Way dollars are going to spend them with the businesses that take them.
And the perception that a stable system can be based upon the charitable donations of a collection of lead businesses in the community is our strongest way of getting the persistent, sustainable currencies out there. That's why we're doing this. That's why we offer a win-win-win package. The businesses win, the charitable groups win, and the general public wins. And we all come out of it even better off than the one-time fundraising. We come out with a machine that supports community and community wealth. So all we've got to do is get these guys on the road, get something actually happening.
Actually happening. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Anyway, just maybe a quick break here because we're at around the halfway point. And I'm Ernie Jacob. You're Michael Linton. We're talking about open money, community currencies, LET systems, mutual credit systems, and in this specific instance, we're talking about a program called Community Way, which can raise a ton of money in any community that wants to for good works. Oh, and just in case you aren't seeing it, there is a phone number that you can call in and join us at 646-716-9424. There's a chat that you can drop us a note, say, tell us you're listening, or ask a question, or join the conversation, and we'll put our emails up there. Sorry, Michael?
The telephone number to call in is free in the United States, so anybody in the United States can call in free there. Others, of course, got to face the costs, but if you're using one of the voice over IP internet links, then generally the cost can be very low indeed. So get Skype, for instance. Get Skype out, and then you can call anytime, any place in the world to join us on this call. So nothing in your way. Yes, and I think we should begin looking more at how to induce those conversations.
How do we get people involved in these conversations, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, so we're talking about the short tail, not the long tail.
Well, we've had a little general discussion here about Community Way as go do it, who loses. But these conversations are pretty sterile when it's just you and I talking to each other about it. We can lay out some shape, but it's not validated by the interaction with other people. There isn't the redefinition of direction and the clarification. And you and I are doing what we're doing anyway, and talking to each other may improve or facilitate that, but it doesn't let anybody else do it. What we need is other people talking to us and doing it, and then other people talking to them and doing it. We need to make the main move.
Well, I think we're going to start getting that, at least on the local scene. And for instance, Carol, with whom I met this morning, who's working on affordable housing and homelessness issues here in the Comox Valley, doesn't have Skype, but she's going to check it out, and she's going to check out this program.
Well, that's good. So we get some local stuff going.
She'll have some questions for us, and maybe the next show we can line them up. We'll see. See how fast it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one.
Well, on Wednesday.
Go on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on Wednesday we won't be doing a show because we'll be down in Victoria. We will be visiting a conference in Victoria, sponsored by...
Why don't we do a show in Victoria? I mean, if we've got the room, we could go up to the room anytime, right? We could set up. We could do Blog Talk Radio from Victoria, from the Empress Hotel in Victoria.
Well, that might even happen, so who knows? There may be a later show. Difficulty is the timing.
Yes.
Whether or not we can manage it inside the time frame. But we will report on it later. The major purpose for going to this conference is that there are people from the Central Bank of Brazil, from the research department of that bank, research and legal, who have been exploring the way to make social currencies, as they call them, and by that they mean mutual credit, let system type activities, time banks, affairs of that nature, but in particular the let system type, the ones measuring in the currency of the nation. How to make such operations acceptable for the central bank to participate. Now this is a very profound analysis in that it speaks not just to the situation in Brazil, but also the situation in any country where there is a need for social currencies, as they are called. It's a very poor descriptive term, very politically inept, I think.
Yeah, as Steve Hart has pointed out, all currencies are social.
Yeah, there's absolute nonsense to talk about them being legitimate or legal tender, and then the social being different in some way. But never mind.
Although if you're trying to sell it to the central bank, it sounds... So that's the discussion we want at the moment, is what central bank wouldn't do this if they had their head up? That is, their head up in the air rather than up the usual place. So what central bank wouldn't do this? You'd have to be nuts. This is legitimate. It's regarded generally as non-inflationary and good for the general public, good for business, good for everybody. And particularly in some countries where the trouble with central banks, though, is that they're informed by economists. And economists know about money. Economists. What?
Yeah, I'd say deformed by economists rather than informed by economists.
Are we gonna spend some time slagging economists now?
Oh, it's hardly worth the trouble. Everybody's done it.
Anyway, but my point simply was that economists don't know money.
No, they've become so much in belief of their own ideologies and mistakes that they've never actually examined them. They're the perfect example of the unaware entity.
You're going to repeat Alan Greenspan? You going to quote him again?
No, I'm not. No,
oh, come on.
Up with Alan Greenspan. Oh,
well, quote him. I think it's a brilliant quote. I think it's good.
Well,
it's apropos.
In his recent book, Age of what? Age of Uncertainty or something? I don't know what it is. Can't even remember it. Age of Delusion, the Age of Illusion, the Age of whatever. He's written a book, and he was interviewed on Jon Stewart's Comedy Central about the beginning of September, I think. And in that interview, he confessed that none of the tools and techniques that he had worked so carefully to develop at the peak of his profession for 40 years was in the least effective in predicting where the economy was going. He was just shooting in the dark. He didn't know what he was doing. He was quite open about that, in fact, almost quite proud of it. He said that if he could, in fact, find out whether people were happy and enthusiastic and optimistic, or whether they were sad and fearful and nervous, then that would tell him much, much more. So, there you go. That's the economist. What color hat do I wave and jump around in to make the world better? Not an iota of systematic analysis. No capacity for it. Conventional economics has just been stupidity for the last N hundred years. And when you cultivate and honor stupidity, you get more and more of it. And basically the economics profession is one of the most unethical components of our so-called field of knowledge. They don't relate to reality. Their glass bead game is detached from all significant relationship to the process it is supposed to be organizing.
Well, so given that, and the fact that these central banks are surrounded, inundated with these economists, how would it be possible for something like community currencies to penetrate?
Oh, by market
force. We're talking about the Bank of Brazil and the research project. I doubt that it's got a snowball's chance in hell.
Yeah, I don't think it's really significant, and I don't think it really matters. I think internet is going to go much faster than the Central Bank of Brazil, and the people of Brazil will have opportunities through the internet that will be well advanced in anything the Central Bank of Brazil can deal with.
You're talking about propagation of open money and community currencies using the internet.
Yeah, fundamentally.
I mean, essentially, we're talking about fundamentally, it's a very, very simple idea that anybody in the world can have their own community currency. Like that. It starts at zero. Go up, you go down. That's a mutual credit system. It's just an idea.
Yeah.
So inevitably, it will propagate. It will catch fire. Inevitably, everybody in the world is going to be using community currencies.
And one of the things that's going to accelerate that are papers like this one that is to be presented in a couple of days in Victoria that say the Central Bank of Brazil is exploring the legal necessary. The fact that the central banks are thinking about this, that they find it compatible with their political, their constitutional mandates, with their agendas even, with their intentions to help the poor people of Brazil become thinkable. Whatever their agendas are, the fact that they are now beginning to explore social currencies allows us to point to the legitimacy of the process. For years, people have said, oh, well, the banks will never let you, or the central government won't, or this isn't good for the economy, or something, without the slightest basis for their understanding, no evidence to support their ideas. Well, here now we're beginning to see evidence to the contrary, evidence that intelligent life does exist in the banking profession at the highest levels, even if it's not very widely spread yet.
You know what I've just thought of right now, and that's the attachment that economists and banks have to this idea of microcredit. I don't recall reading that in the Brazilian paper. Was there something about microcredit and community currencies in that?
I don't remember if that was dealt with. I'd have to look back in it.
But in any case, the idea of community currencies and microcredit
are seen as related, definitely. There's also this concept of what's called the correspondent bank, which they mean is a counter in the local drugstore or cafe or railway station. It's like a counter where you can pay your bills and file checks or whatever. So correspondent banks, microcredit, social currencies, and the alleviation of poverty, they all interface in the same general area. And it's very important for the major financial authorities to properly understand the implications of this process and how it's going to happen to them. It will happen to them. It won't happen because they do something. They're far too slow. But it's useful for them to be identified as even asking these questions.
Well,
anyhow,
you've talked to bankers.
Oh yeah.
We've talked to the local bankers about
and we will talk again. And we will talk again. And these local bankers and central bankers and other bankers, the key thing they have to recognize is that their position in this game is as carriers of the currency, not as underwriters.
Or issuers and controllers.
Precisely. To be an issuer is to be an underwriter. To be a controller is to think that they're in charge of the situation and can tell others what they may or may not do. And these are very improper positions. For a start, they're instantly evadable. Nobody needs to apply to the terms and conditions that a central bank might impose or propose to impose for its local currency. But I think there's a deeper issue, is that the form of community currency we're talking about is meta-stable. It's not totally stable. It's not secured by gold bars or something, which is the usual belief in the standard of what money is worth. And as such, we don't want the banks to be misperceived as those that give it credibility. And this would be doubly dangerous. It would be dangerous for the currency system itself, because the banks can't effectively sustain its full power and variety without becoming at a higher risk than they can properly manage.
Well, and in fact,
so it's bad for the banks to be underneath one of these systems. It's also bad for the general public to think the banks are backing it. We want the general public to realize that this is their money, not the bank's money, and that the banks are validating it by carrying it.
For an insurance agent to run the system, to provide the services.
Well, the services can be provided by Internet. Put it in the widest sense. The software is easily available.
So what's the bank for?
The bank is there to buy the money. That's the best thing that banks can do, and local governments. local governments can't initially expect to receive this money through the tax base, at least not without an awful lot of organization and redevelopment. So assume that local governments have a limited access to revenues in this sort of money. They might make parking fees, they may make library fees, they may have all sorts of service fees. Bus fares could be in local currencies, community money, but taxis cannot. And that's very important and it's very useful, but it means that a local government would want to issue the money, would be desperate to spend more than they've got. Governments always want to spend more than they've got, even when they're cutting deficits and cutting back on everything. They'd rather have more than less. And if we gave the local governments, regional governments, even national governments the right to issue community currency, when we're compromising their credibility and our own. So governments and banks can only use this money effectively by getting it by other means. And the easiest means for either of them to get it by is by buying it.
Well, and
so
earning. Earning
perhaps, but hardly any earning. Frankly, how do you earn community currency as a bank? It'd be pretty difficult. You'd have to do something like a split interest on lending or something, so that borrowers pay part the.
I guess I was thinking more in terms of attracting customers that take out other accounts and do other, the other business. It's still like any business, attracting customers that as a loyalty program.
Yeah, but it may not yield them a direct revenue of the currency. This is the point. When you look at what can a bank charge in community currency, there won't be a hell of a lot for a while that they will feel confident to shift from their current cash charging, interest, checking charges, bank ATM fees, things like that. Will still stay in the hard currency for a long time.
Right.
Now, what won't is all sorts of bank spending. Banks hire maintenance crews. They pay local property taxes. They do. Well, property taxes won't be in community currency for a while, but many things that the bank does, their employee base, staff bonuses, charitable donations, can be done very nicely in the community currency if they can get it. And the best way of getting it is to actually just simply buy it. And they validate the money of the community by saying, we're holding $20, $30, $100,000 of this money on the positive side because we believe that the credibility of the issuers, our community, is good and true, and we're up for it. The banks participate in the community by trusting it. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing? Banks trusting the community rather than the other way around?
Amazing. Totally.
So, this is the presentation we did in London. Some 4 or 5 years ago, we nearly got a bank to back a London money project based upon them buying the community currency.
The egg bank. Whatever happened to the egg bank? Actually, let's not talk about the egg bank. Let's just briefly talk about how the government can buy. I mean, the local government particularly can buy the money from the projects, like the affordable housing project. I mean, they can pre-buy the community currency from the affordable housing project.
Yeah, the local government can support one of these projects by saying, we approve of the results that this project may produce. We are about to support that by being guarantors that the project itself, when it receives 10% of the funds raised in community money, that a substantial proportion of that 10% will be bought by the local government for cash, so that the local government will have spending power in the local community, and the project organizers will have the cash flow necessary to do the project. So the local governments and local banks can be power instigators in the process by undertaking that condition. That's the one we're going to take to Van City. These are the discussions we'll be having. with the Brazilians, our point is to show them that the place for the bank is on top, not underneath. It's quite opposite to their perception. And we will be advising the Bank of Brazil to take more advice on this subject, particularly from us. We seem to be the only people who make any sense around here, so that'll be the context of the discussion we hope to have on Wednesday with the bankers of Brazil.
Right, and we'll be reporting back. We'll report back, I guess, well, we may run the show from the Empress Hotel in Victoria on Wednesday, or we may report on it later, like maybe on Friday.
And we may have
somebody engage with us on Community Way, so that we can make this a little more understandable to other listeners. I mean, I'm sure there are all kinds of questions that come up for people, and
if there are questions, they know what to do about it. If you have a question, ask it. If you don't have a question, in a variety of ways. You can ask it by
emailing us. I mean, the show's just about over, so you can't do it on the chat line. You can't call in, but you can email us. My email is ernie@openmoney.org. And you are?
MWL@openmoney.org. Basically, if you're interested, we'll be hearing from you. If you're not interested, don't bother. We don't care.
Yeah, and so websites, Let's.net has a listing of pretty much all the stuff
that's the place to go. Everything from there, spread out in all directions.
And Community Way is at openmoney.org/CW.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to take off now.
You're crapping out again.
I am.
2 minutes before the end.
Well,
okay. I will ad lib.
Eager and anxious. We've got to just keep putting a discount on the capital.
Okay. Well, see you in a while. To get outside, yes. It's a beautiful day here.
It's very nice at the moment.
The leaves are turning. It's quite lovely.
It's a good day. Much better than it was an hour ago. Thank you for the conversation, Ernie. I'll catch you.
Okay, Michael. Talk to you again. Bye. Okay, so that was my number of LET systems and open money systems. And I'm Ernie Jacob. I've been working with Michael now for about 10 or 12 years. I'm losing track. He's been at it for, over 25 now. The first LET system was started here in the Comox Valley in 1982 and was quite successful for a number of years. And it was a very simple mutual credit system. People, you open an account in a LET system. Your account starts at 0. You buy something from somebody, your account goes negative, their account goes positive. And so it's just people bouncing up and down. Anyway, that's it. There's only 1 minute remaining or so, and I think this switchboard isn't quite correct. But in any case, I'm Ernie Jacob. This is Open Money on Blog Talk Radio. You can reach us at Ernie@openmoney.org, and Michael is MWL@openmoney.org. So if you did hear any of this, and actually one of the things we'd like to know is how it sounded. We have had a little bit of trouble with sound in the past, and we'd like to know. We'd like to know how it sounds. And if you have any questions, you want to join in the conversation, we'll be back here for sure on Friday, 10 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time. I don't know. Maybe it's Pacific Standard Time by then. I don't know when it switches over. No, it can't be switching over in the middle of the week. Anyway, so, and we're on the west coast of Turtle Island. And I have now 37 seconds remaining. Thanks for listening, and goodbye from the Comox Valley in British Columbia, Canada.